all of your shows kind of had a unique path to the screen. Why don't you start talking about, how your shows ended up on the air? Graham, why don't you start talking about Sneaky Pete?
Sneaky Pete started as a pilot for CBS. It was an idea that Bryan Cranston had, and they partnered him with David Shore, a fellow Canadian. And we do like the secret handshake and shit. But,
you can show us later.
Yeah. So, and then CBS passed, and Amazon was interested, and they made some changes. And the first big change was they wanted to have the show head from being more standalone procedural elements to having a serialized big story, and also going from the network 22 to Amazon's 13. Well, 10. So that was the big change. And then I came in and brought a bunch of people I'd worked with on Justified. And we started the writer's room in February of 2016.
Ava, why don't you tell us about Queen Sugar and how that got to the screen?
We're going in order.
I was trying to mix things up. Trying to keep things exciting.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Queen Sugar. I had just finished working on Selma with Oprah Winfrey. I just wrapped, and she said, "Come on down to my property in Maui and relax." And when one says that, you say, "Yes, ma'am. I will come to your property in Maui and relax." So I went, and she, while I was there, there was a book on the nightstand on the right-hand side. And I said, "Oh, yeah, there's a lot of different books around," because she's really into books. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's nice." Then the next night, the book was on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. And it just started appearing around. And I was like, "Wow, what are you doing? Do you have something to do with this book?" And she's like, "Oh, yes. I actually have the rights to this book." So really, she had urged me to read the book. I read it on my flight home, and called her and said, "Gosh, I thought it was really fascinating." And she said, "I thought you would." My family is my father's from the Deep South, from Montgomery, Alabama. And it's about a family where one of the main characters is in Los Angeles and the rest of her family is in Louisiana. And that's basically my life. And so I felt like I could enter into it from her point of view, our main character, Charlie. And from there, I started to build the rest. And since she owns the network, she greenlit it and gave a full series order, and we were off and running.
And let's go with Jonathan next. Why don't you tell us about I'm just going to mix it up. Why don't you tell us about Westworld?
That was terrifying. I've been working with J.J. Abrams for a couple of years on Person of Interest. We were doing the broadcast 23 episode a year thing, and we thought this isn't challenging enough. Let's throw something else in the mix. J.J. called, and they had developed a pilot with my wife Lisa, and that hadn't gone forward. And J.J. had actually sat down with Michael Crichton 23 years ago to talk about a reboot or whatever the hell you'd call it for the movie version of it. And J.J. hadn't quite figured out how you'd remake it as a film, and in his own inimitable way kind of sat on it for 20 years. And then called us and said, he knew that I wanted to direct more, and he sort of said, you can do something really special with this. And I thought about it a little bit, and I'd seen the original film, which is very cool. It was Crichton's directorial debut. Yul Brynner sort of reprises his role from The Magnificent Seven. It's really, it's a very cool film. And I kind of had it stuck in my head, and I didn't quite, I was thinking, is it like The Love Boat? And there are different people who come every week and they get killed. And then new people come and they get killed. Lisa hadn't seen the original film. And so I couldn't quite wrap my head around it, so we said no. And then a couple of weeks went past, and Lisa, who hadn't seen the original film, wasn't burdened with trying to figure out how you navigate through, adaptation is tricky that way. How do you navigate through what's already there? And she's like, "It's robots fucking. This is, of course we could make this." And she'd figured it all. There's more to it than that, but she had figured out, she understood it. She knew how there could be a series there, and a series that went beyond the original film. And so we called back and said, hey, you know that thing that you were talking about? We want to talk about it again.
Jack, you want to tell us about Shades of Blue?
Sure. Shades of Blue was in development for a couple of years with Jennifer Lopez's company. It was based off a spec script by Adia Sock. And by the time I came on board, Barry Levinson was already set to direct it, and it was straight to series from Universal to NBC. And two things happened. I said, Barry Levinson and Jennifer Lopez, that sounds very interesting. And it was interesting. It was an interesting sensibility and fearless, I thought, because the pilot, I mean, in the first few pages, Jennifer's character covers up, the shooting of an unarmed man by a cop. So I thought, wow, they're really jumping off a cliff here, and I think they were really, because by the time I came on board to showrun it, and we started. The idea was to start the writers' room early, get a long runway, because Jennifer she does other things besides act. I don't know if you know. She
does?
Yes. So she had a full schedule, and we had a very narrow production window, and we had to hit it exactly. So they really wanted to sort of have a long runway for it. And it was a really interesting experience for me because I came on board, and there was a high incident pilot and high concept and some characters that needed to be fleshed out and an ensemble developed and whatnot. But it was really just saying, okay, this is what you got, and go, and things came to us just by trying to make it work, which ended up being very interesting.
And David, what drew you to Big Little Lies?
I don't have much of a story. I'd like to say it was a long ordeal, but it was much easier than all. I didn't have to go to Hawaii. I didn't have to go back 20 years. There was a book. It was a great book. It came to me, and Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon brought it. So I thought, okay, well, I don't even have to cast it. And HBO, we pitched it to them first, and they bought it, and it was literally from book to series within a year. It doesn't always go that way. Rides are usually a lot more bumpy, but this was a confluence of a lot of great circumstances, starting with a really terrific book. So the story was even broken for me, so it was an easy one.
And Kyle, what can you tell us about Mr. Robot?
Well, first, if I can say, the camera ops are doing a great job, but being Mr. Robot, I'm going to need about 75% more headroom. I can just really get up there, or else Sam is going to have a fit when I get back to New York. Thank you. That's exactly. Appreciate it. I actually joined after the pilot was picked up, so Sam and Chad Hamilton, another EP on the show, read a short play I had written, which the lead had a similar sensibility that Elliot has, that Rami Malek's character has, like a disaffected youth type of style. And it clicked with Elliot. I read the pilot. I loved it. And a couple days later, I was on a plane to LA to start working with them. So I helped flesh out the rest of the season with them. Sam had an outline, and we worked together on that with a great group of writers, but it just kind of fell into it, and lots of luck.
It seems to have worked out for all of you guys. We're living in a golden age of TV drama, as exemplified by all of your shows. How much freedom are you given by your various networks and studios to push the envelope on how much creative freedom can you take?
For me, a lot. My expectation was we weren't going to be able to push these anti-heroes as far as we needed to. I mean, the show is basically a morality play on steroids, and we're limited by language and other things. I kind of call it a hybrid between a cable and a network show in that regard. The only thing that's different is, we really have to jump out of the gate with incident and story. But from a character point of view and pushing the boundaries, I was actually quite surprised. I got a call at one point saying, push more boundaries. I said, okay, wait for pushback. We'll tell you when you've gone too far.
That's amazing. I mean, as a lone broadcast representative on this panel.
We weren't pushed by HBO to stretch boundaries, but we were certainly supported by them because we went into some pretty disturbing subject matter on Big Little Lies. the conceit from the beginning is that this was escapist fare. So we were inviting our audience to come to a place where the land was beautiful, the sun set every night, the people were beautiful, these seemingly perfect lives. That was our invitation. And once people came to that party, it was anything but. And we were going to really then delve into some really tough subject matter. And the pushback that you can often get from a network is, well, wait a second, that's not our palette, that's not the invitation we extended to our audience. We have something that's working, let's stay within that mold. And to HBO's credit, they never blinked once because, as I said, it was pretty difficult material. The terrain was hard for the actors to navigate at times. The director, writing it was very disturbing, but we were all very committed to it, and lucky that HBO shared that commitment.
I live in Monterey, and it's a little different than it is shown in Big Little Lies. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce of the Monterey Peninsula, anyway, I do live in Monterey. Sneaky.
That's not what your house looks like?
No, no. It's funny when you live in a place, you go, "That's 20 million." Okay, that one. Oh, that little bungalow. Yeah, that's in Pacific Grove. That's probably 2. But anyway, with Sneaky Pete, the only really thing we had to do for Amazon was mention free 2-day shipping in every episode, and that's fine. No, I mean it was going from Justified on FX where we could say shit, but that was, and now of course you can say everything, and it was, we enjoyed that. It was also the freedom to go long, not have to hit the 42 minutes. Although I got to say by the end of Justified they didn't care how long it was either. So everything is sort of changing. I felt very supported. We all did at Amazon. It was really just find the most entertaining show you can do, and so we did our best.
Well, USA and UCP really let us take a risk, and it was something that sort of seemed like a first over there, in which they were said, "Okay, this is absolutely batshit insane, but we're going to let you guys go and see what comes of it." And the notes that come back are very supportive. They're totally on board. It's like there's just one thing that we're not allowed to do. So it's like, somebody can OD and hallucinate. We can do a sitcom episode. We can slice somebody's throat, whatever. But if there's vomit, then that's the line. It's like I don't know who there has a problem with vomit, but that's it.
I did at one point have the conversation with HBO, David, I don't know if you ever did this, about what they can't show. And it was a very short list of things we were not interested in. Vomit was no problem. Now it was they're here, so I have to say nice things. It was an incredible experience, especially coming from broadcast. And CBS had been very, very, very supportive in terms of doing a weird kind of AI conspiracy show on their network. But at HBO, we were into a space where there really weren't any limits on the complexity. And you kept waiting for the moment where we were like, we're going to do 3 timelines, but not tell anyone, and kind of spoilers for the folks who haven't seen the show, and just pile in everything. And part of the reason why Lisa and I wanted to do the show was it was an opportunity. We couldn't get it out of our heads. It was an opportunity to talk about all of the different things. Sometimes a show activates or connects to a part of your life, or this was everything that we were interested in doing, all in one show, and we wanted to go all the way down the line with that. And there was never a moment, and it's testament to this kind of amazing moment that we're in with television, where there weren't any constraints, any limits on how dark or deep or complex we could go, and that's a unique experience.
Yeah, but mine was a unique experience as well. OWN is owned and operated by one woman. I mean, she has an amazing team of people there, but it is based upon the things that she wants to see and the vision of what she wants to put on television. And so it's different from a network that's owned by a conglomerate or a series of other corporations. It is very personal, and so it's very singular in that way that I do have to answer to one person. And but within that, she gave great freedom to explore the things that matter to me. I'm interested in talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm interested in talking about mass incarceration. I made a whole documentary about it. I'm interested in issues. Thank you. I'm interested in issues around immigration and the ways in which the family in Queen Sugar, a black family that owns land, is dealing with the next generation of workers on the land, which are brown people. Now, there's a lot of passing down of the kind of prejudiced behavior and kind of patriarchy that is inherited in some way. So a lot of cultural tropes, a lot of issues to do with race and sexual assault, and like all the things that we were interested in talking about within the space of one community and one family, moving through it, and in doing so, also rendering those images of African American life, of black life in a certain way, just visually, the aesthetics of it, and shooting the show differently than I had seen black shows shot. The application of certain kind of cinematic principles to shows about black folk, that even the lighting of black. I'm like big on the way that black people are lit in films and television, because so often when I watch it's we're lit poorly. You have two people in a frame, and one is white and one is black. The most cinematographers and the principles of cinematography is to light for whoever the main character is, and most often that is the white character. And so often traditionally and historically in film and television, you have black people that are just underlit. And so the care that we're taking with the image, and the time that it takes to do that, and the personnel it takes to do that, all of that is it's more than usual. And so OWN and Warner Horizon, our studio partner, were very supportive in all of those ideas and let us make what we wanted to make.
Talk about, I'd like to hear from the rest of you too. I mean, we're obviously living in a world where headlines are dominating, the news every day. How much of that do you want to incorporate into your shows? How much of that infiltrates your writer's room, or do you just tune it out?
We're doing a show about a con artist, so I don't know if that applies. But no, it's an amazing day if we can start the room and not spend the first half hour talking about, whatever's just hit the feed. But we are really doing something that is not so keyed into the day's events, but we do think about that, certain characteristics of personality a lot.
Our characters lie a lot, and that was before the election, so we were ahead of our time. I think we had to be very cognizant of the police community relations and Black Lives Matter and that whole dynamic, trying to tell all parts of that story and really being sensitive to it and trying to advance a dialogue on it. But other than that, there's so much scheming going on and back and forth and whatnot. It's hard to. It's not ripped from the headlines.
What about in Mr. Robot? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of parallels with what's going on in the world.
Well, we do have the power dynamic there with Philip Price and White Rose, Michael Christopher and B.D. Wong. They kind of play like the Illuminati style, like running the world. But Mr. Robot is a strange example because season 1 was like present day, and it becomes a period show each passing season, in that we're following Elliot's calendar and Elliot's world, and each season is 3 months. So, by the time we get to season 5, we're just going to be touching 2016. So, we do use a lot of news of the day in the background. Like, if you watch closely, there'll be a TV on, and it'll be what happened on that day in the real world. But even though as you mentioned, we do spend about half the day talking about what's going on in the news that day, we don't put too much of it into the show.
I also want to go back to the point you brought up about directing and how you approach directing. How, for each of you, does directing filter into how you present the show? Do you want to direct episodes yourselves? I know for Big Little Lies, John Mark Vallée brought so much to the table as a director. David, do you want to start?
Yeah, I belong on radio. I have no visual aptitude and no real desire to direct. I hear every one of my episodes exactly. Tonally, the nuance of the sounds and the voices and the rhythms, I bring a very, very strong point of view to that. But when it comes to the spatial demands and staging and the filmic powers that we bring to the medium, I truly belong on radio. So the danger for me with some of my series is I'll get directors that so want to honor the word that's their focus, that's their concentration. With Jean-Marc on Big Little Lies, it was a great collaboration from start to finish. But one of the things I enjoyed the most is he would come to me in his kind of funny French accent, and he would say, "I know what you're saying here with the words. Can I try it with picture? Can I try it with the film?" And I would say, "Please do." And he would make adjustments, give me actual notations on the script of how he would change a line to a shot, and that's the way we worked, and it was seamless. Other times I didn't get him totally. The first episode he came to me, he says, my rhythms are longer. Can we get it to 52 pages? You've written 54 pages, and that's going to be too long. You have to get it to 52. Can you get it to 52? And I went, well, I'm not sure what I would cut, but I'll give it a try. So we hung up the phone and pulled out the script and started to pull and tweak, and got a call back from him. He said, "It's not a problem. I talked to the script processor. He changed the margins, and now it's 52 pages." And it was a good show. It was a good show.
I think it's I've directed, and it's hard under the demands of this job if you're show running to do it, especially if you're shooting out of town. The last time when I first started directing, we had to cut a character's arm off, in order to write our way out of a story hole that was created because I was focusing on directing. So it's a joy, and it's exhilarating, and it's great. It's personally gratifying, but I found it hard to do when, at least in the first few seasons of a show. I don't know if that's...
I loved it, but it is challenging in trying to, like, for example, this morning I was on a tone call for my cruise in Louisiana. I'm on a tone call with writers and the directors, and the director happens to be a woman because all the directors on Queen Sugar are women. That's just an aside. But so talking to her on this tone call about episode 211, while giving notes to someone on 212, while prepping an episode that I'm going to be directing, while editing another episode. Now, if you're an episodic director and you don't have the other demands of the show running process, it's lovely. But I found to be directing and also to be having an eye on different aspects and different production aspects of everyone else's material. And I'm also directing another movie called A Wrinkle in Time at the same time. It's a little much. I'm taking on too much. But I love it because the elongated story, this is my first series, so you know, I'm sitting next to David E. Kelly and I'm very flushed. It always makes me excited. But, you know, the idea of being able to tell a story beyond the confines of a film, beyond the confines of 2 hours, to be able to say, I could be dealing with these characters and these stories for 22 hours, for 3 years, for however many seasons you get or however many episodes, and to be able to follow the, you know, kind of the human spirit through all of the nooks and crannies of a life is such a joy and such a privilege. And I find myself dreaming about these characters, thinking about the ways that they move, and can't wait to get back to them. Now, usually in film, you can't get back to them. But now I can just pop in and direct an episode and join them again. And a big part of this series is, you know, Mr. Robot has a very particular look. We have a very particular look, and a very specific editorial style. And I've found that those are making its way into the writers' room. That I'll read scripts from our writers that will speak to certain shots they've seen before, so that everyone starts to get into a certain rhythm about cutting patterns and cinematography. And that's when I feel like we're really making something that's cohesive, when everyone is kind of thinking like a director in some ways, and which is something I encourage. And so yeah, that's how it works for us.
Kyle, for Mr. Robot, I know Sam was directing all the episodes. How does that affect you in the writer's room and the production of the show?
Yeah, it's so he's the mastermind behind the visual of the show with the help of our great DP Todd Campbell, and so while he's working on that, I spend a lot of time in prep and getting, like, working with the production designer and locations and props and getting ready for the set he's going to walk into the next day. So we'll have side conversations. I'll zip to set and talk with him about a couple things, and I'll head back out in the van and go to wherever we need to go. And that's kind of how our relationship is functioning now that season 2 and on, that he's directing every episode. That said, I also still love to be on set and try to get there a couple hours a day at least, if not half the day or more, because although I actually don't have a desire to direct, I just love working with actors. So when they come with questions or want to discuss a scene or anything like that, I'm always happy to do so. And, you know, we'll get random emails all times of the night just saying, you know, hey, I was thinking about such and such, and then, you know, the next day we're talking about it on set. So to have that relationship is great. But as far as being behind the camera, I'm leaving that to someone else.
And Jonah, you've got 3 timelines. How many different worlds at this point?
I don't think I'm supposed to say at this point. Get in trouble with my wife. You know, I think it is, in a sense, and certainly in the broadcast world, it feels terribly irresponsible as a showrunner to go direct. I remember going to direct episode 16 in a season and coming back, and, you know, you're a fantastic partner on Person of Interest, but coming back and feeling like, okay, that was a very selfish thing to do, but I loved it. With Westworld, it was, and, you know, for me, I'd spent sort of 10 years being the ghost that haunted Warner Brothers, my little office, and I'd wander around and write movies. And part of the reason I was drawn to TV is I'd seen my wife's experience, you know, the concept of a writer's room, the concept of hiatus sounded really exciting. And so the collaborative aspect of it was part of what drew me to television. And we worked with some incredibly talented directors. We have some incredibly talented directors working on Westworld, but we knew that we wanted shooting the pilot Westworld, 2 aspects to it. We knew that we were going to ask for extraordinary things from our cast, that we were going to ask them to go to extraordinary places in terms of their vulnerability and their, you know, Evan describes the show as kind of the acting Olympics, because we'd have them switch out of one character to another and, you know, laugh hysterically and stop and cry and stop, and that combined with a desire, I mean, clearly at this point, TV has just eclipsed the narrative complexity of film. I mean, there's just no contest. I work in both. I love film. I started in film. It's great. You know, to Ava's point, when you get 10 hours to play with characters, you can go so much deeper. But in visual terms, it's always felt a bit like the poor relation, right? And that's because, and in part, not for, you know, you have incredibly talented people who work in the medium. You just got to shoot 9 pages a day. And that inherently limits the amount of, you know, brio that you can bring to the image. But we knew with this one from the beginning that we really wanted to go for it a bit. Not to look like a movie. We wanted to look way better than a movie. So we shot on 35mm film, and, you know, we we knew that without mediating it with a collaborator that would just Lisa and myself on set, we could build a very intimate set, and we could really take some more risks with the direction, with the way that the show looked, and only have ourselves to, if we come back and say, why did you only cover that? I'd sit in the edit suite and say, why did you get one more angle on that? And I'd have this kind of schizophrenic conversation where I'm yelling at myself for not getting enough.
You got a lot of angles.
Yeah, we did okay.
A few of you guys are about to go into second seasons. What have you learned from your first season that you're bringing into the second? Graham?
That's a good question. This is my first time working in streaming, and just that whole concept of having the whole show ready and it dropping all at once. And, there isn't that sort of progression of week by week getting feedback on how the show is doing, how characters are faring. It's just, you get reviews for the whole season within 24 hours. So it's a lot to sort of take in. And in terms of our experience with it as a writer's room, it was really a matter of sort of figuring out what worked and what didn't work, as you always do. And it's a first season in a show, so you don't really know what show you're doing until you get toward the end of the season. At the same time, we are doing a show about a con artist, so there's elements that you want to build into the whole, you want to create a whole story. You want to, have the 10 hours kind of worked out, or at least have targets. And so you have to really build that whole thing before you start, to a degree. But even then it starts to change. The one thing I did ask for them this year, I'd asked for it last year, and they ignored me, which was actually fine, was to have, a week of shooting at the end where we could go back and change things. Because we found, the story really wants to go this way. We now need to go back and set that up. Because as a con, you really need to have all the elements work. And so, it's that kind of thing. Just back to the directing question, I've worked with Michael Dinner, who was the directing producer on Justified, and he did the Justified pilot for years. And I did it for years. That's weird. He did a pilot for years. Anyway, he did all 6 years of the show. And then came in to be directing producer on Sneaky. And, I've thought about directing, and people always ask me that. I directed on a couple of HBO miniseries and had a fantastic time. But really the only episode I can imagine doing would be the last one in a season. And when you have Michael Dinner or Adam Arkin or Rosemary Rodriguez or, whoever that you've been working with, or John Avnet, man, I want them to do the last episode of the season. So, that's okay.
I think you try to figure things out, from the production schedule and the post schedule, and try to streamline it, make it more efficient so everybody's lives could be easier. But I found that if you try to think you have the show figured out, once you have the show figured out, you're in great peril of repeating yourself. And so the constant thing I try to keep reminding my writers and trying to force upon myself is to reinvent and push and change it along the way. Don't change it so much that you lose your fan base and your audience, and that you can communicate that vision. But at the same time, we have this wonderful medium where there's always another episode, so why not have it a little different?
Yeah, I think for us on season 2 of Westworld, and we famously had a very smooth run on the first season.
How'd that work out for you?
It was a process of finding. I'd come out of broadcasting, and I think I was filled with, 10 episodes. That's easy, right? That's like the first 3 months of a broadcast season. And so we approached it from this, we're going to write. And I think everyone was very enthusiastic about the show. The network was very enthusiastic about the pilot. We shot the pilot. We had a good long time to sort of establish and build a look at the show. We had a great experience shooting the pilot. I think everyone was very keen to get the show on the air. So we started shooting with kind of 2 scripts, which is, that's a luxury in broadcast terms. In cable, for us, it proved to be not the right way to do it. We got into production and realized, having built this very intimate set on the pilot with this amazing cast, that to then kind of say, okay, we're going to be in the writer's room and here, meet these guys, and you're working them. It didn't work that way. We needed to spend more time on set. We had a very specific idea for what we wanted. And so we were really splitting our time between both places. The other part of the learning curve was ensemble, that good grand HBO tradition of the sort of omnibus ensemble show was something that I'd never done before. In film or television, we never tackled that kind of, so we sort of approached it scientifically and broke down every version of an HBO show that we'd ever seen in terms of, how many storylines can you tell in one season? And there's a wide variety. I mean, the audience, for us from the beginning, the proposition for everything, movies and TV, was always, bet on the audience. I came here in '99, and Memento was the first film that I worked on with my brother, and we couldn't sell it because the executives would come and watch it and say, "Yeah, I like it, but the audience won't get it." And you kind of think, okay, with all due respect, what makes you think you're smarter than the audience? The audience is incredibly smart. That's one of the sea changes. Even imagine that conversation, given the quality and caliber of the shows that are being made these days. It's kind of hard to imagine that there was a moment like that. But I think for us, it was a question of finding how to tell those stories. And it turned out that, there was a bit of an upper limit to how many different characters we could tackle in each episode. So there was we had a fantastically talented team in post. We'd bring in the episodes, and post was always, and I'd watch this with my brother on Memento, where there was a sense for what works on the page. And you go shoot it, and you take it back and you watch it, and it doesn't quite work the way you thought it would. And you have to have the confidence to get in there and, you really use post, and we have the luxury of time with HBO to use post as an opportunity to finesse the cuts and figure out how is the audience going to be able to best engage with this story.
Yeah, with Big Little Lies, we're not sure there is going to be a season 2.
Oh, come on. We all want one.
We never planned on it. It's possible. There's a lot of talk and thought being put into it now, but it's not something we planned on. It was conceived as a one-off. In fact, if there was a given going into it, is that we would only be 1 year and out, because when you get the likes of the acting ensemble that we had, both with Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon and Alex Skarsgård and Shailene Woodley, these are people with all big careers with a lot of commitments lined up. They carved out a window to do this project. All of them had 1 year deals. So the idea that this would go on beyond that was just not something that was in our brains when we started out. And to be honest, I think that was a joy and a luxury and a freedom, because we committed to this one thing as a complete picture. We didn't have to conceive of future storylines. We didn't have to protect characters and make sure that they were could be redeeming in any kind of perpetuity. We could be true to the story and be true to the characters and tell that story. Now the irony is, I guess, in success, people want a second year, and again, I'm not sure it should happen, but we're not ruling out the possibility. And the other pleasant surprise, or irony, if you will, is the very reason that we assumed it would be a one-off, because of this major talent with all these commitments, they're at the forefront now of wanting that second season. I think Nicole and Reese fell in love with television, something that Ava was talking about. In television, I've never done films. My wife has, and I've seen that it can be a somewhat nomadic experience, that you commit to a project, you shoot the project, and then it's over and you move on. In television, you give rise to a community, you inhabit these characters. Ava was talking about those characters follow you home. They do, they become part of your lives. And we all went into a bit of mourning when the season ended, because we did think it was over. We did think we have to say goodbye to the characters. I could still, bump into Reese at Starbucks, or go say hi to Nicole at dinner or something, or run into Shailene as she's saving the planet. But to spend time with Celeste and Madeline and Jane, those people were suddenly gone. And You get laughed at when you say that you're hurting, you're missing them, but they do become part of your lives, and they should. They really should. I mean, the line that most sticks with me as a writer, Robert Frost had a line, "No tears for the writer, then no tears for the reader." And what he meant by that is if you don't feel it, if you don't get in there, then don't expect the constituency that you're trying to serve to. The problem is when you do commit and you do get in, they do become part of you, and you do miss them. So it's now we have to separate that mourning process from the logistical and practical viability of carving out a second season.
Would you be on board for a second season if they came up with an idea?
If the material justified it, yes. I don't think we should do a second year just because the first one was successful. I think if we could find a story that lived up to the values and the themes and the ambitions that we had year one, then I would be open to it. But I'll be the first one to admit that that egg is not hatching in my brain. Leon, the Moriarty, the original author, she's obsessed with it, I'm told, and she is digging in, and we're all anxious to see with what comes out of her petri dish. But at the end of the line, it was a joyous experience for all of us. So we're all leaning in. Yeah, maybe. But we have to put that sort of practical hat on and say, are we leaning in because of the joy or because the material demands it? And it should be the latter.
Well, I hope you do it again. I really do. I loved it so much. I think what I learned for second season, and we're in the midst of shooting a second season, we're a little more than halfway through now, and in a physical production, is I learned about the audience. And I learned about who's watching the show and what they were leaning into. And really, in a much different process than in my films, you have the opportunity to hear and feel the rhythms of the kind of contract you make with an audience on television, which is completely different than film. I mean, in film, I work in a silo. I try to make something that each frame of the picture I love, because I have to say, at the end of this, I give it away, and I can't touch it again. I can't fix it. I can't go back for a second season or the next episode, and it has to be fully formed. It has to be its own thing, and you don't get that feedback in a way that you can actually. There's a give and take with the story, and so I found it fascinating, this process, and I'm very active on social media. Like, I can actually hear. They're telling me what they think, line by line, scene by scene, character by character. In between air dates, they're thinking about the characters too, and what they hope and what they think and what they think. Sometimes you listen to them on Twitter and what they think is going on. I'm like, I never wrote that. Why do you think that? Why were you coming up with this? Their dreams for it, and I just found that interesting and fascinating. And so we brought some of that into the writers' room the second season, and I'm trying to kind of one up the voice on social media. Like, I want to do the things that they're not thinking about, the things that they don't expect. And so that listening, that kind of social listening is giving us a challenge of what we're trying to best and try to go beyond what they're even thinking about. And it's a challenge for us in the room, because I think our minds would have gone to some of the stories that are coming off on Twitter. We say, no, that's the first line of story. Let's go deeper. So it's been lovely. And also it's really shown us, for a show that, many regard as a black show, because a lot of the people that make it are beautifully black, and our family is black, and it's set in the black community. It's been really, I'll have to say, surprising to me how many people who aren't black watch the show, who watch a show and feel like they're entering into the lives of a family in which they aren't centered. Because most people who aren't of color are used to watching and consuming media where they are centered. And so I found that they seek, everyone wants to be the center of the story. And when you're used to being the center of the story, that's not an issue. And so that's why you don't have a lot of people who aren't black going to see black movies, right? The movie can be fantastic, but unless it's a Moonlight, something that catapults into a prestige category, a lot of folks aren't seeing films that could be fantastic with black people or brown people. It's fact. And so why is that? It's something about the centering. It's something about seeing yourself. And so I've been really surprised pleasantly with, kind of the anecdotal exchanges that I have with people who walk up to me in Gelson's, like, and when people come towards me, I try to think. I play a little game. What are they gonna like based on what they look like? They're probably gonna talk about Selma, or they're gonna talk about 13th, or they're gonna tell me how much they love Wrinkle in Time, or they're gonna, and it's the darndest thing, the people that talk to me about Queen Sugar, that you never look, they don't look like they're gonna talk to me about Queen Sugar, but they talk about Ralph Angel and how much they, fall in love with this character who's formerly incarcerated, and they don't know anyone who's ever been to prison, and yet they feel like they know him and they love him because they go home with him every night, and so on the show. So I would say audience has been the surprise and the joy, the television audience, and the way that we get to have a back and forth with them has been just such a gift as a person who had been steeped in film before. I really love TV. I want to do a lot more of it.
We hope you do. And Kyle, just end with Robot. Let's tell, every season I think fans have come to expect that there's going to be a twist. Is there going to be a twist going to season 3?
I thought this was about season 2. That's what I was.
We've already seen it. We know what's coming.
Now, season 1, it seemed like the simplest way to put it probably was that while we did sit with our characters and have great character moments, what we thought to be great character moments, and several fans seemed to agree, it was more plot-based. And then season 2, we dove in, all into character, and spent a lot of time there. And it seems to have generated, as you speak of, Ava, like a lot of conspiracy theories online. Like, I mean, you can go deep into a rabbit hole if you touch Reddit. It's scary.
Don't go there.
Yeah, it's like, and the running joke in the writers' room is, that's not bad. It's like we're looking at our board and like looking at the, all right. Yeah, and to speak to the reveals and the plot twist and all that sort of stuff is that something that Sam instilled early on, and then we talk about and we made sure of in season 2, is that we want to make sure that although we do have those fun things, we never lie to the audience. And if you go back and watch again, you see that it was set up the entire time. And people jumped on that early in season 2 when they noticed, like, Elliot's living at his mom's house and the wallpaper perfectly matches, like, the cells in a prison and pieces like that, and what his regiment was each day. And it was freaky. We thought somebody had leaked everything from the crew, because like on day 1 on Reddit, of course, someone had broke down the entire thing and had the Elliot jail storyline figured out. We were like, holy shit, that's quick. But yeah, like we said, we're not trying to go, haha, got you, but also it is a little bit of fun to have those reveals, of course.
Jonah, can you relate to that at all?
No, not even a little bit. We're actually hoping to solicit Reddit. We're just going to kick back and let them write season 3 on the board, and we'll just go produce it. Yeah, Reddit is like your annoying friend who tells you what the end of the movie is 20 minutes ago. I used to be that kid, but I didn't have Reddit, and I didn't have the ability to put that out there. And so you're faced with this dilemma of, do you just pull the rug out? Right? I mean, we layered things in, and we had the same experience. We put episode 2 out there. Spoiler alert. And I remember at 7, Eastern time, 7:43, the first little thing pops up. Wouldn't it be crazy if, that? And I go, cool. Okay, it's working. We're not cheating the audience. We're layering in the things that you need to layer in. The difference is, and I wholly, mark this up to my experience primarily doing this sort of storytelling in a dark box for 2 hours where you got them, right? Unless they go to get some goobers and check the internet. If you can just hold them in there for 2 hours, you're good. And when you try to do it, and I'm a big believer, the Netflix thing is very cool, but I'm a big believer in the Sunday night, Monday morning water cooler broadcast thing. Like Ava's experience, it's incredible to see that building community and that family that comes together around a show. But it gives lots of people time to try to figure out what you're doing. So I think for us, it's a question of hoping that the coverage of the show, because if it's on Reddit, it's fine. That's the community that's self-selecting that's there. It becomes more problematic when you're looking for, you Google when's the next episode on, and the first headline is, "Can you believe this crazy fan theory?" with a picture of Jimmy Simpson and a picture of Ed Harris. And you kind of go, oh, shit, we didn't tell a cast for 2 years. So, I think our hope is that in the next season, things that sort of were considered, wild, crazy fan theories that turned out with our show, True Detective, you saw all these crazy fan theories didn't connect to the narrative at all. With our show, every single fan theory was a twist in the show. So I think what we're hoping for in the second season, we're going to keep telling the story the way we tell the story and hope that the community around the show kind of, the irony is, of course, Game of Thrones, they're all in books. You can go read them. But that community rallies around the spoilers and kind of bottles them up in a way that's very cool.
Isn't it flattering though? I think I'm just amazed that people are talking about it, tweeting about it, thinking about it, posting about it, days later and in between. I mean, you all shows are based on twists and turns, but shows that have to do with just more everyday things. I mean, I would see people going in deep on Big Little Lies. I mean, hardcore, and allowing people to talk about how it reflected in their life. And, it's just, I don't know, it's the power of art. It's a beautiful thing. But, television allows it in a different way, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder if that would have happened if we were on a Netflix or a streaming, because, as you say, when the show has time to resonate with the viewer and it gives them time to create a dialogue and talk about the ideas, the themes that you're trying to explore, you can reach a deeper place. When you are binging, it can be a very compelling and fun weekend, but it could be over just like that. And you might miss out on a lot of the dialogue that goes on between your viewers. And I think that all of us up here, I think that the fantasy that we have in our heads is that people are talking about our shows. That's what we want, to hit that nerve, to have the opportunity not just to entertain them, but if you're lucky on a good night, move them and provoke them and get them to talk to each other. And you do have more of an opportunity when you're airing once a week because you afford that time for discussion. And with the binging thing, that's a great model that works too, but it's a bit like a big bag of potato chips. You're going to eat the next one, you're going to eat the next one, you're not going to sort of resonate and think about how good the last one tasted.
Well, unfortunately, we've got to end it on that note, but thank you so much.